devices to silent, and welcome everybody along to tonight's meeting, and also welcome to our viewers at home watching the meeting via the live stream. I'll now ask if you could all please be upstanding. Deputy Mayor Proud, could you please read the opening prayer?
Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions, to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Councillor Sandri, could you please read out the acknowledgement of country?
On behalf of councillors, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we're meeting, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you. You can take your seats. Without prior approval, any recording of this meeting is prohibited. No action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to written advice from the council being received. Brings us to item 1, the official opening. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the council meeting the 4th of July 2023 open at 6:30 p.m. Attendance and apologies. I have nil. 3, approved leave of absence. There are no elected members currently on leave, but the following are upcoming. Councillor Carlo Perkov granted a leave of absence for the period 8th of July through to the 11th of August 2023, and Councillor Migdale granted a leave of absence for the period 12th of July 2023 to 20th July 2023 inclusive. Item 4, disclosure of interest. There were no disclosures for the Planning and Development Committee meeting. Councillors, are there any disclosures for this evening? Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am on the JDAP, so I will have a interest to walk out in 13.2.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Sandri.
Thank you, Mayor. I sit on the Land Redevelopment Committee for Development WA, so we have an impartiality on item 13.1 and will leave the room. In relation to 13.2, that is the JDAP application, I am the alternate member and will leave the room should the members not be available for that meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Migdale.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As I sit on JDAP, I will leave the room for item 13.2.
Thank you. Councillor Ree.
Thank you. Yes, as I'm a deputy member for the JDAP 13.1, I'd ask whether or not I need to serve the room, considering that the other two members look like they're going to be here. So no. I can declare an impartiality, but I don't think I have to leave the room because I think the intent is that they will be here.
Yes, that
Thank
will be
you.
fine. Thanks, and Councillor Farrelly.
Asking for a bit of advice here on 13.1 development application, lot number 572, house number 200 West Coast Highway, Scarborough, Development WA, proposed 27-storey mixed-use development. Even though I have no, in terms of financial or otherwise, the lawyer here and I have had this, I'm just trying to work out, is that permissible to sit into that, even though, because I have no financial interest, I do live in the master plan area?
Yeah, I would think if you're declaring an impartial interest, is that what you're trying to
Thanks, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and we're not a decision maker. Is that all the indication we have at this stage? And can I ask councillors to make sure you do the paperwork for those declarations and submit them to governance, please? Brings us to item 5, petitions. 5.1, Councillor Lagan, would you like to table the e-petition requesting to improve road safety in Inglewood?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I will. So, e-petition 12 verified signatures. We, the undersigned, do respectfully request that the council investigate options to increase visibility and safety at the junction of York Street, Waterford Road and Kennedy Street in Inglewood, noting the vegetation and parking make it almost impossible to see oncoming traffic when crossing York Street to Waterford Road to Kennedy Street. Consider proactive options to reduce hooning at the same time, given a recent increase in hooning in the area, and investigate measures to calm traffic along Kennedy Street with particular attention to the junction of Kennedy, Oxford and the corner of Kennedy Street, Carrington Street, where speeding is common.
Thank you. Councillor Ree, 5.2, I believe you have a verified petition to table regarding traffic calming in Woodside Street.
Yes, thank you. It's not actually on the running list. I'm not quite sure why, but anyway, it is here. We petition for the traffic calming device for speed reduction on Woodside Street between Sackville Terrace and Moreland Street in Doubleview, as Woodside Street is the first street west of Huntress Road to go through to Scarborough Beach Road. Work traffic begins at 5 a.m. Our street population density has increased dramatically and will continue with the further block subdivisions presently under works. We have concerns for our residents, especially children and the elderly, pets, cyclists and vehicles parked on the verges. If traffic was limited in this section of Woodside Street, there would be a positive ramification for the rest of the street. Residents have suggested possibilities such as speed humps, roundabouts and terminating the street at Moreland Street, effectively making a no-through road. We petition the City to review economically viable measures and to introduce calming devices that respond to the health and safety of our Woodside Street residents.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillors, are there any unverified petitions you'd like to present? If not, can I ask for a move and a seconder to accept those petitions? Move Councillor Reid, seconded Councillor Sundry. Just a show of hands, Councillor, to accept those petitions. That's unanimous. Thank you. We'll go on to item 6, which is responses to previous questions from members of the public taken on notice. And all public question time responses from last council meeting were published in the minutes of that meeting, which brings us to item 7, public question time. We do have some questions for tonight's meeting, so I'll start by calling Julianne Poland, if you'd like to come forward. If you come up to the microphone, and as the first person, if you'd like to press the bottom right-hand silver button, and you'll see a red light come on. That's it. And then if you just lift it up a little bit for yourself. And we just need your name and suburb to start, and then your first question, please.
Okay. My name's Julianne Poland, and I live on Lanark Street in Menora. And it's for item 13.2, 2 to 8, Adair Parade, Cobinia. Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors and city staff. I've only got 2 questions tonight because I realise that you're not the decision maker for this item. It is with JDAP, so I'll try and keep it brief and hopefully within something that you are in control of. At the last meeting where this development was considered, Council put an alternate recommendation forward for refusal based on the bulk and height of this development. This recommendation was carried unanimously by this council. Unfortunately, the view wasn't pushed by city planners at the JDAP meeting, and they didn't put much emphasis on this when it went to the JDAP meeting, and said that they supported the increase in height. Could the councillors please reaffirm their opposition to the bulk and height of the proposed development, and please put in an alternate recommendation for refusal based on these issues, so that the JDAP panel know that the community and council's concerns have not been addressed with the latest amended plans. The plans have not changed in regards to height or overdevelopment with the amount of apartments and lack of parking.
Thank you. That item is on the agenda, and council obviously heard your concerns. I will get Ms Shears to provide a little bit of context.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for your question, Ms Pollard. As the Mayor mentioned, this item is for Council's consideration tonight before going back to JDAP for consideration. At the last meeting that was held on the 30th of March, JDAP deferred the application for a number of reasons. And there were 5 reasons. Unfortunately, height and bulk weren't one of those reasons. Outlined in the officer's original RAR report, we discussed the height and were satisfied with the proposal based around height.
And your second question, please, Ms Poland.
Council is now trying to retrospectively fix the traffic impacts at this same developer's other site, being the corner of Clifton and Central Ave in Inglewood, which is going to cost ratepayers a lot of money because the developer was never held to account when they developed this site. The community already has major concerns with the traffic at the Adair and Walcott intersection. Other than asking for time for a road safety audit, what steps will Council be taking to make the developer responsible for their impact on this intersection and not leaving it to Council to fix up later down the track because the developer has been allowed to cut corners?
Thank you, and I'll get Ms Shears to provide some comment.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you again for that question. The road safety issues that were identified at Clifton and Central have been ongoing for a number of years and predated that particular development that you're referring to. The community concerns at Adair and Walcott are also acknowledged, and the report refers to a road safety audit being undertaken as part of the reason for deferral tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Glenda Georgie. Thank you. And your name and suburb to start.
Yes, my name is Glenda Georgiou and I'm a resident of Corbinia, and good evening all. I will go through with my first question, even though it's probably more suited to the following JDAP meeting that will occur. Are councillors aware that the Metro Inter-North JDAP request at the time of the JDAP meeting on the 30th of March this year required further information from the developer relating to car parking for commercial staff, customers, residential visitors, and wished to advise that the issue of where customers visiting the bar, restaurant, wellness centre, etc., has not been resolved, nor has the residential visitors parking been resolved. The RA report advises that the proposed allocation of car parking for the development is not only inadequate, it will result in informal and unmanaged car parking, spilling out onto the surrounding street, which is a traffic and safety risk. Not my words, they're the RA's words. Further within the same report, it was stated that the proposed development, in particular the commercial car parking shortfall, will likely result in major parking problems in the locality, with insufficient car parking bays provided for commercial use and residential visitors. This will result in parking, again, spilling out onto the adjacent streets, with unmanaged car parking leading to safety issues in the locality. My understanding is that safety in design is not negotiable, and that it's actually a legislative requirement.
Thank you for that question. Yes, councillors are aware. I'll get Ms Shears to provide some comment.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question, Ms Georgiou. Yes, the city officers agree with your assessment of the plans to date. The applicant did make some changes through this process. The issue still remains in terms of the actual allocation of car parking bays. So the first officer's report highlighted this as a concern. Some changes were made, but that concern still remains for officers. If the JDAP are of a mind to approve this, city officers believe this can be addressed through a condition because they do actually have the total amount on site. It just hasn't been allocated as per the land uses that are on site.
Thank you. And your second question.
Right. My question too is, with road safety auditing being a requirement to be conducted on all projects that involve a permanent change to the road layout on a state-managed road, is there to be any permanent changes to the surrounding road layouts to accommodate the proposed development on the corner of Adair Parade and Walcott Street? And will the company contracted to do the RSA be independent contractor who is contracted by the City of Stirling?
Mr Guillemot.
Thank you for your question. Sorry, through the Mayor. Thank you for your question. The second part, yes, the contractor will be independent, though they'll be engaged by the city. In most cases, they'll compile an audit team, and in most cases, the city has a representative on that audit team. But to ensure complete independence, the audit team won't contain any city officers, so they'll contain obviously professionals in the field and potentially officers from other local government areas, but yes, they will be independent. In regard to your the first part of the question in terms of will there be any modifications on the road network, firstly I just need to clarify it's not a state. Walcott Street is not a state road, it's actually a local government road, so any changes that are deemed necessary can be determined by the City of Stirling in conjunction with City of Vincent, because it's a boundary road. But that will be, I guess, determined by the road safety audit and the recommendations of the road safety audit.
Okay, thanks for the clarifications.
Thank you for your questions. Arnold Davies. Evening, just your name and suburb.
Arnold Davies, Carrinup. Good evening, Mr Mayor, staff, councillors and members of the gallery. Will the City of Stirling councillors vote to ensure that the Carrinup Library site remains in the ownership and control of the City of Stirling so that the area doesn't get overdeveloped? Currently there's too much development and it's caused traffic congestion in the area. The land was vested in the control of the City of Stirling in 1970 by the R&I Bank Land Trust, and it was only changed a bit by the Planning Act of 2007. The R&I Bank Land Trust, they vested it for the use of the community, for community purposes. When the matter was first planned for redevelopment, one of the people representing developers approached the committee, planning committee, and objected only on the basis that if they put high rise on the site, they'd have to put office accommodation on the ground floor.
Would you like me to answer?
Beg your pardon?
Are you ready for an answer?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Look, the item on the agenda tonight isn't to vote on whether to or not to remove a library. It's to discuss all future possibilities, acknowledging the fact that any future possibilities will include a community facility and a community library.
Right. Will the councillors rescind the motion which gave the CEO the authority to enter into negotiations to dispose of the Carrinup Library site? This was in about 2017.
There's no motion on the table for the CEO to negotiate currently. That's why it's on the table tonight. The motion is a notice of motion that I have put up to enter into discussions, but not negotiations. And it's done in the agendas to ensure that the public are very aware that it's happening. And there's no hidden agenda other than to discuss all future options for that site.
Well, I was present at a council meeting in about 2017 when the council authorised the CEO, and I thought that motion would still be in.
I'm happy to take that offline and investigate and provide you a response in writing to that one, Mr.
Thank
Davies.
You. Will the City of Stirling ensure that reprints of the waste booklet, which goes out to the ratepayers, has the dates of the Green Verge pickups in it, in a like manner to when it came out for the 2015-2016 year? 16.5% of the ratepayers in the City of Stirling aren't on computers, and mainly they're elderly people, so they're disadvantaged. Unfortunately, the people who are getting old now are like dinosaurs and are treated like it by the different authorities.
Thank you for that question. My understanding is that they've already been printed and distributed, so the answer is probably no. But I would suggest the reason it's not is because there's so many different dates throughout the City of Stirling, and they vary right throughout every suburb.
But when it was printed, it was done in a manner which was easy enough for people to follow. It didn't have dates, it just had the months for different zones, and it was quite simple.
And again, I'm happy to follow that up. I don't have the final answer, but my understanding is that the ship might have sailed this year, but I'll follow up for you, Mr. Davies. Ashley Morrison. Thank you. Your name and suburb?
Yep, Ashley Morrison, Lanark Street, Coolbinia, and it's regarding 13.2 Adair Parade. Just got one question, and that is there any interest that should be declared, noting that Amanda Shears, Planning Officer for the City, is President for the WA Division of the Planning Institute of Australia, that are advocates for development at any cost? And the planning firm for the Adair Parade development is Planning Solutions, who also have a representative on that division. Given that Ms Shears is President and Planning Solutions has a representative, is there any conflict of interest that should have been declared in the report?
The simple answer would be no, but it would be entirely up to Ms Shears if she wishes to declare an interest.
Okay, thanks.
Maurice D'Argent. I apologise if I've messed that up. And your name and suburb, please?
Marie Sargent, Doubleview.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, Mayor, councillors and staff. My question is regarding the St Bridget's Terrace local area traffic management. I would like to know what can be done to reduce the speed of all vehicles that use St Bridget's Terrace, the impact of ongoing high-density developments and the international school has greatly increased major traffic issues. We have only been given one option, which I received the letter last week, for consideration by the nearby community, and I don't believe that is strong enough to prevent accidents and fatalities, and they should be considered as a priority in any community, not a deciding point.
Thank you for that question. I'll see if Mr. Dugimov.
Yes, thank you through the Mayor. Russell Jackson, Traffic Engineer at the City. So, thank you for coming down tonight. Obviously, this is a proposal we're looking at and we're seeking community feedback on this at the moment. We've investigated what options were possible on St Bridget's Terrace, and we've also had a look at funding opportunities, so this would qualify for a black spot funding. So this proposal's out for community feedback at the moment, and so once we've got the feedback, we'll be able to make a decision on that. But the proposed treatments will address traffic speeds on the road, and it's an option that we can fit on that road.
Thank you. Simon Wheeler. And while you're coming up, I'll just rule to extend question time.
Good evening, Mayor Owen, councillors, staff and the gallery. Mayor Owen, if it helps, you voted, in relation to Mr Davis's question, you voted twice to allow the CEO to enter into negotiations in regard to the library site. And
thank you, that does help, Mr Wheeler.
I thought it might.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor Owen, the officers'
I'll be
report...
checking, though. And just your name and suburb.
Sorry, Simon Wheeler, Scarborough. The officers' report for item 13.1 recommending refusal of Row Group's application for a 27-storey build-to-rent development at 200 West Coast Highway is both welcome and comprehensive. It does, however, not seem to note that the build-to-rent model itself is not supported by the prevailing planning framework and cannot, by its very nature, provide affordable housing. The Scarborough Beach Master Plan development guidelines require affordable housing components, or the provision of significant cash in lieu payments, which the proponent has not offered and Development WA has not asked for. The scheme doesn't offer any alternatives. It's affordable housing, cash in lieu, or nothing. So I have to disagree strongly with the report's suggestion that this application might qualify for a bonus height of 6 storeys, and in lieu of cash in lieu, does not qualify for even base height approval. Build-to-rent development rentals are usually 10 to 15% above base market rates, and despite the proponent stating that they will offer 20 years affordable rental, which is not affordable housing, it is unclear what guarantee or legal framework exists to give council any confidence that this affordable front-row ocean view altruism will occur or continue. So my question is, Mayor Owen, can the department comment further on the affordable housing provisions, and is this not something the report should consider further?
Thank you for that question. I will get Ms Shears to answer, and I'm interested in this as well, because my take on it is that, especially with such a large mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments that are built to rent in a market where people are looking for rentals, that I would personally think that that does count for affordable housing.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Wheeler, for the question. The letter in attachment 1 does outline some commentary around affordable housing. The City agrees wholeheartedly with your position in terms of whether or not that actually qualifies to meet the intent of the policy from Development WA. Development WA's requirement states that it should be social or affordable owner-occupier. Development WA have taken the view, and I believe Sentinel was the first build to rent that offered this affordable rental scheme that has now been sort of implemented as part of this proposal. The City is a referral agency for this application, so we don't necessarily get into the nitty-gritty of the assessment under that framework because it's not something that is applicable for us at this stage.
Thank you. Mayor Owen, noting the recent bulldozing of Bush Forever protected dunes at the development site adjacent to Reserve Street, I went online to check what permits were in place, and it was previously possible on the city's website to track applications by address, so you could view nearby demolition, building or development applications and permits occurring in the vicinity, which is very useful for people who are buying property or concerned about nearby development or building work that may have an adverse effect on them. The online application tracking is now restricted to requiring knowledge of the exact application number. The city informed me on the phone that this is for privacy concerns, but according to the Building Act 2011, permit authorities must keep a register of permits, building approval certificates and building orders and make it available to the public so that the community remains informed about what has been approved. Whilst the city is not obligated to provide the previous excellent online service, this change to the website is a significant step backwards in transparency and accountability. And given the privacy excuse holds no water, it's absolute nonsense. And given council were not given the opportunity to vote on this matter, why was this regressive change implemented?
Ms Hughes?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Wheeler. I'll take that question on notice and we'll have a look into that particular issue for you.
Thank you. Mayor Owen, the answer in the minutes of 20th of June to my first question leave me little the wiser. However, my understanding is that the lease variation approved by council in April of 2021 for the Mount Norley Golf Club over an A-class reserve on Crown land, currently awash with sawdust, is not currently in force, nor could it be without ministerial approval. And the only legally binding lease is the current lease, which does not require, as you stated at the 30th of May meeting, a vegetation management plan, which has finally been recognised by its honest name by the Mount Norley Golf Club on their website as a tree removal programme. My question is, Mayor Owen, why did you inform council that the lease required a vegetation management plan when at this point in time it does not?
Mr Blanchard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The agreement is for an extension of the lease, and in order to exercise the option for that extension, it is required to have a vegetation management plan approved by the council.
Does that help? Answer the question, Mayor Owen. The current lease does not require a vegetation management plan. You informed council that it did. And that was the advice given to council.
Well, you've just got the answer. The lease extension does require a vegetation management plan. That was the lease extension this council considered.
And when the lease is extended, one would have to be produced, yes. Thank you.
Peter Ellis.
Good evening, Mr. Peter Ellis, in Corrine.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors, staff and fellow ratepayers. Can you please advise the total number of employees as at the 30th of June and not as FTEs, please?
Ms Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Ellis, for your question. You've got me there because I don't know the total, but it's around about 1,400 people, so 1,400 head count rather than FTE.
Okay, thank you.
That shows you've been listening, Mr Ellis, because you've worked out that there's head counts. That's very good.
They're the same number as we had last time, Mr Mayor, so that's very interesting. No change, okay. Where is the summary of my question omitted from council minutes from the 30th of May meeting as stated in answer 1 minutes 20th of June 23 meeting? Oh, that's double Dutch, isn't it?
Yes. We may have to listen to that one again and respond to you in writing.
Okay.
Oh, no, I know we've got some. Mr Blanchard?
Yeah, thank you. The city didn't consider that to be a question, as it was simply a statement and no answer was provided.
Yeah, I know. I got back big words, commentary, which actually meant the same thing. Why has Agile been deleted from core values usually listed on page 1?
Ms Hawkins?
Thank you, through the Mayor. Thanks, Mr Ellis. When we went through our strategic community plan process this year, we reviewed the values with the elected members, and we have innovative in there, and that sort of included the agile piece. So we have agility within the innovative value.
Right, so good. You're no longer agile. Okay, thanks very much. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors?
We thought it was being overused. Roland Hadley. Name and suburb, please.
Roland Hadley, Woodlands. Good evening, all. How many ratepayers are currently banned from asking questions at council meetings? What legislation exists, and how long are the ratepayers expelled for these heinous crimes?
None.
I.e., that is, how many ratepayers are currently?
None.
None?
None. Zero.
So anybody can come here and ask a question? They haven't been banned at all?
Mr Hadley, you are living proof.
Thank you. Good. And be careful, Mr Mayor, be careful. What has happened to the proposed Woodlands North development, also known as the Great Woodlands Sandpit, which borders Ewan Street East and Scarborough Beach Road?
Ms Hughes?
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for the question, Mr Hadley. That application is on hold at the moment. The applicant is resolving some ownership issues with the site.
Thank you. Who in the city releases items stemming from council meetings to the press? What is the process, and who approves the wording?
There's different processes. Normally, the final approval rests with myself. Many of the things that follow on, or the press articles you would read following a council meeting, because the newspaper journalists, believe it or not, do watch the live stream. Hello, Chris Tan, who'll be watching tonight from Perth now. And they follow the agenda motions that are published after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And on there are other occasions. For example, tonight, following the budget, there'd be a prepared press release on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Mitchell. Mr Mitchell, good to see you up and about. Yep. Name and suburb?
Robert Mitchell, Karrinyup. Good evening, Mayor, councillors, staff and people in the gallery. Yeah, I posed questions on the 9th of May council meeting, and I wish to reflect on those answers. Why have those questions not been answered truthfully? I'll start with the first one.
They have, Mr Mitchell.
Sorry?
They have, Mr Mitchell.
Okay, I'll ask the first question then. Clearly, the Chief Executive Officer has primarily initiated his own application for the extension of his contract within the accompanied by the use of the City of Stirling, the City Administration and legal opinion for those sources to his sole personal benefit.
Thank you for that question, Mr Mitchell. That is incorrect. The Chief Executive Officer did not initiate his own application for the extension of his contract.
How was the application initiated that the...
Through the Mayor and Councillors, Mr Mitchell.
Administration...
through the Mayor and Councillors. Your second question.
He must have initiated it.
No. No, there's a clear process in contract extension. Mr Mitchell, your second question.
Well, is this going to go on all the time when someone from the City of Stirling...
Your second question, please, Mr Mitchell.
It follows from the enunciation of the Chief Executive Officer's application that the legal opinion was gained to add to his application for the extended contract for the sole benefit of the Chief Executive Officer. As the answer would be generic, opinion why, right or wrong, the need to shroud in council secrecy.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Mr Mitchell. I can tell you now the CEO contract extension is a confidential item. Any legal opinion sought by this council is sought by the Mayor and the councillors for the benefit of the council. Your third question, please.
Yeah. What action does the council intend to take to disallow this type of corruption?
I rule that out of order. Thank you for your third
You will.
question.
Okay, you rule it out. Now, my third question.
No, that was your third question.
My third question.
That was your third question, Mr
No, it
Mitchell.
wasn't.
Yes, it was. And I've
No,
ruled that out of
wasn't.
order.
It was the same.
Mr
My
Mitchell,
third
take a seat, please.
question,
Mr Mitchell.
Once more, could you please have an explanation as to
Take a
why
seat, please,
I am
Mr Mitchell.
classified as a restricted customer?
For that very reason, probably, Mr Mitchell. Take a seat, please. You, along with about 6 people, are a restricted customer. You still have the right and the privilege to attend council meetings. And you may now sit down. I ruled the last question out of order. And I'll invite Phil Tarker if you'd like to come forward.
Very undemocratic.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors and staff. Regarding 13.2...
your name and suburb, please.
Sorry, Philip Tarker, Ardross Crescent, Coolbinia. Regarding 13.2, 2 to 8, Adairs Parade, Coolbinia. Mr Mayor, having seen the recommendations in the Responsible Authority report in the agenda this evening, the Coolbinia community find it unsatisfactory and have requested an alternative recommendation. We have emailed the councillors requesting an alternative recommendation. Has an alternative recommendation been prepared?
That's entirely up for council. So that item is on the agenda this evening and it's up to council to consider that and put forward an alternative recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Arthur Mistillas.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors and office staff. I live at 32 Carnarvon Crescent, Coolbinia. Arthur Mistillas is the name. This is in regard to development application 221406, which I know is being heard later this evening. At the council meeting of the 21st of March, council unanimously carried a motion to refuse that application because of the conditions in the RAR that were developed by the planning officers. But in addition, they added a further condition that the development height will impact the character and context of the residential area, which is a heritage protection area with a maximum height of 2 stories. The development is not consistent with the streetscape and will impact on the amenity of the local area. That was approved unanimously by council. The addition of reason E, which is the one I've read.
I do need to get to a question.
Yes, I understand, but I need to put in a context, Mr Mayor. It'll be quick after this.
That's right.
So here we are today, that before the JDAP meeting on the 30th, the JDAP people requested the planning officers of the city to give them an alternative recommendation for approval, which they reluctantly did. I've read the whole document. So the questions are council planning officers bound by the decision of council?
Yes, but it's a very technical part. The councillors will put a recommendation in, as you know, with the RAR. Council can add to that recommendation, but we're not the decision maker.
You're not the decision maker?
No, JDAP is the decision maker in this case.
Okay. In that case, when the alternative recommendation was requested by the presiding member at JDAP, and it was responded to by the officers, why didn't they say, yes, you can go ahead and approve it subject to all those conditions that were in the RAR, including condition E, which went to the bulk and height of level of the development from 5 levels to 3.
Thank you. I don't think you can condition the height levels, but I'll get Ms Shears to provide comment.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mistillas, for the question. Mr Mayor, you're correct. We're unable to condition changes that will materially change the outcome of the development. We try our best to try and get to an outcome where we think If there are minor things, we can condition, but where there's something that will materially change the outcome or the built form, we're unable to condition it.
And I noticed JDAP gave you 2 days to do that, the 27th to the 30th. Okay, the last question, sir. Why didn't the council planning officers press the point over height when they were pushed by JDAP at the JDAP meeting, who seemed to be only concerned with whether this was merely a planning impediment rather than its effect on the local community, which the planning officers had already described?
Thank you, Ms Hughes.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mastillas. That particular point of refusal at the 21st of March council meeting was included by council. That wasn't as part of the original council officer's report. Council officer's assessment of the height and the plot ratio meant that we felt it was satisfactory in terms of meeting the outcomes under the R codes, and we were supportive of the height for a number of reasons. In putting that recommendation then to the JDAP, it was discussed. It was, as you might be aware, it was a long meeting, 4 or 5 hours discussion in that meeting. Height was discussed. However, it wasn't one of the points that the JDAP sought further information on.
I was at that meeting, and the point is, what I did know.
Thank you, Mr. Mastillas.
There are 3 universes going on here. What you were doing.
Thank you, Mr.
what
Mastillas.
JDAP
It's not for debate. You've had your questions.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your questions. That's all I have on my list, but just in case I've missed anyone, if you indicate if I've missed anyone. If not, thank you. So I'll now move to item 8, application for leave of absence. Councillors, are there any requests for leave of absence? No indication. I'll go on to item 9, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I have a mover and a seconder to accept the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 20th of June 2023? Move Councillor Kristovich, seconded Councillor Criado. If I can have a show of hands to accept those minutes, please, councillors. Thank you. And against? So councillors all voting for that is carried, except Councillor Ree, who's voted against. Thank you. Item 10, announcements by the presiding member. We do have a couple of announcements. I'll start by asking Deputy Mayor Proud. I understand you have an announcement regarding Parks and Leisure Australia Awards.
Indeed. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Recently, Mr Mayor and I had the pleasure of attending the Parks and Leisure Australia, PLA, WA Awards of Excellence. The city's public open space strategy 2021 to 31 received a PLA WA High Commendation in the Strategic and Master Planning Award category. The Strategic and Master Planning Award recognises the development of strategies for parks, open space, sport, recreation and leisure opportunities by rewarding outstanding examples of strategic planning that have enriched and revitalised a community. On behalf of the Council, I pass on our very sincere congratulations to the officers of the Rec and Leisure Services Business Unit for their recent High Commendation Award.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And Councillor Sandri, I believe you have an announcement in relation to the Aquatic Recreation Industry Awards.
Thank you. The Terry Tyzack Aquatic Centre was highly commended at the recent Aquatic Recreation Industry Awards for the Aquatic Facility Safety Award. The City received a high commendation following the installation of a variety of safety systems and processes, an extensive training and professional development program delivered by Royal Lifesaving WA, and embedding a successful safety culture within the team. Congratulations to the City.
Well done. And we'll now go on to item 11, unresolved business from previous meeting. I have nil. And now on to 12, which is reports and recommendations of committees. Councillors, we'll first deal with the items from the Planning and Development Committee meeting. Nothing is required to be pulled out. However, any alternative recommendations that were provided to governance prior to midday today have been included in your running sheet should you wish to pull the item out. Councillors, do you wish to pull any of the planning items out? Councillor Ferrante?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, 13.2, please. Oop, apologies, I jumped the gun.
You've gone early. You got excited. Councillor Reeve?
Yes, please. May I please call out 12.1 DS2 on page 62?
You may. There's no other items to be pulled out, so I will go to those Planning and Development Committee items. There is only one of those to be pulled out, which is 12.1 DS2 now. It's a rights of way naming, and it's been asked to be pulled out by Councillor Reid. Councillor Migdale as chair of that committee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move committee's recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the committee recommendation? Thank you. Deputy Mayor Proud. Councillor Reid, are you opposed or do you have a question?
I have an alternative recommendation, so therefore I'm opposed.
Okay, so Councillor Migdale. It is just naming of a right way.
Yes, no, I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, have you got anything to add?
Just briefly, this actual lane did come to us some time ago. It takes a very long time for names to come to committee and for a decision to be made after consultation with the ward councillors. Then it goes to the Geographic Naming Committee and they take their due course to decide whether it's suitable or not. And there could be any number of reasons why it's not. Might be within 2 k's of another road with a similar name, or it might be hard to pronounce, etc., etc. However, this one has we decided this a couple of years ago. It has been returned to us by the Geographic Naming Committee for us to rethink it. Officers have given us a choice. I certainly got advice from the officers, and I presume my co-ward did as well, to actually put forward or in our order of preference what we would like, and I was actually the first one that was thought of was Nunn, but I thought no, Nunn Lane just sounds too hard to say and it could get mispronounced if emergency vehicles are going there. So I was more than happy with Lakeides Lane as first, Rummage Lane second, and Nunn Lane third. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Reid.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to foreshadow my alternative motion, please, which is, if it could just bring it up a little bit further.
So you've got a choice. If you can foreshadow it, but it means we put the other motion first, but it says you want to refer it, so that would just be a procedural.
Sorry, it's a procedural motion to refer it. Actually, no, it's not.
You want to refer it to a later meeting to be reconsidered?
No, I'm putting up an alternative motion that, yes, sorry, referred. Yeah, my apologies. Sorry, wrong one. Yes, refer the item rights of way between Scarborough Beach Road and Ewan Street Double View as shown in attachment 1 to the Planning and Development Committee on the 8th of August to allow officers to investigate and suggest local names for local roads, right of ways. I'm happy to say that the whole idea of these right of ways.
It's not for debate, but we'll get you to do.
That's my decision. That's my reasons for the decision. The change was that the whole idea of the rights of way naming was to make sure that they were local people. So we're actually supporting people in the city of Stirling, etc. This has come up before, and as it was alluded to earlier, it went backwards and forwards because we're not looking to the local people. And I've had discussions with the directors about it as well, and I'm happy if he wants to make a comment, but that was suggested the way forward.
It's a procedural, so you've asked for it to be reconsidered. Is there a seconder for that procedural? Councillor Farrelly. That is a procedural to hold it over to a later meeting in August, so I will now put that. Thank you. That motion is lost. So we go back to the substantive motion, which is moved Councillor Migdale, seconded Councillor Proud. And I'm happy, being no debate on this. Yeah, you're against. Would you like to debate? You've just given the reason you don't. Okay. Okay, you can continue your debate.
As I said, the reasons why I asked it to be held over is probably one of the reasons why the state government asked for it to come back. Is some of the issues that are raised here are not to do with locals, and it's not only this right of way.
I just want to clarify, I'll get the officer just to give comment on that. That's not why the state government asked for it to be reconsidered. It wasn't one of the considerations even. Mr Rodich? Oh, Ms Shears.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yeah, there are a number of reasons why this particular naming list was put back to the city for reconsideration. We put through the list to Landgate, however, it doesn't meet their criteria for a number of reasons. Obtaining local names is inherently hard. We do our best to try and research and talk to the Mount Flora Museum for suggestions, and also seek advice and input from the local ward councillors. We're happy to consider, any suggestions that local ward councillors may have in terms of continuing on that theme, which for this particular area was the historic artist theme for road names, but that in this instance it didn't meet Landgate requirements.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much for the staff to support my comments. It was very good. Took a lot of words out of my mouth, which is good because it still comes back to the basics. This is the City of Stirling. We're supposed to be promoting people in the City of Stirling. We have a lot of terrific people in the City of Stirling who've not only done things where they're artistic or whatever, sporting, but some of the people here, they were actually building roads with their hands when they were buying blocks in the 50s. They were part of the people that built the Nookinborough Plank Road. We have some really great stories to tell. You've got this fantastic one that's just been uploaded by our lovely librarians about this wonderful lady in Innaloo, Delvine Hutchinson, and what she went through as a child, etc. We have some really great stories. They're the people that we should be recognising. The whole reason we started naming right-of-ways and why the government allowed us to do it and participate was so that it would become more of a local content. And this is where it concerns me that this particular application was 2 years ago brought up to us in 2021, and it was the same issue then. Why aren't we having local people? This is it. I'm sure if the people that are writing the reports actually went out to the community or consulted more about some of the great people that became part of our Scarborough, what was Scarborough called? The Scarborough Scarborough Chronicles, we had a plethora of unbelievable stories. And I didn't even heard of some of these people, and I've been born and bred in the City of Stirling. But they did unreal things, especially with the caves underneath the clock tower in the early 1940s, but 50s, but this is a family show, so we won't go into those. But they are some really fabulous stories, and they're the people we should be actually showing. I don't understand why the staff keep giving us names that is not in accordance with the policy of local people. That was the whole reason we did it, and that is what I'm asking for. And I have had this discussion 2 years ago about the staff actually making sure that the people are local. And I'm quite happy for the director to make a comment on that, but around the table, I'm sure it doesn't matter what right-of-way it is, but we're running out of right-of-ways in the City of Stirling on our developments, etc., because it's good, because we're upgrading them. But so the ability to have roads or anything named after locals is getting less and less. So we shouldn't be dismissing the fact of local people need to. It is really important. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it going back to the staff to have a report, because really this report doesn't actually say it all and doesn't give justification to the policy that was approved by this council.
Thank you. I will get Mr Rodich to provide some comment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Reid, we don't have a specific policy. We're guided by land. Through our process, we do engage with the ward councillors, and I know an email was sent to you in May, as well as Councillor Proud. We did receive some feedback, and we take that into consideration. As Ms Shears pointed out, that we do seek to find names which, I guess, have a historical link to the community, historical link to the suburb, and in our attachment 1 that provides our justification for those three recommended names. But we don't have a policy. We do engage with the ward councillors, and I'm not sure if you did provide feedback in that instance for this one.
Thank you. Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I am going to sort of just comment a bit because I grew up in Doubleview, and the names that I don't recognise those names, and none of them have relationship to the Doubleview area, even in the past historically, because like Councillor Ree, I'm interested in the history as well, and the Plank Road book that came out. I have read that. There's a number of people who were very instrumental in making, quite strong community decisions in the area over time. And it would be nice to, as someone who was brought up and went to school there, and look, the Dominican nuns were all around the area there, so you could just cut off one end and have it called Nun Lane, and you remember those Dominican nuns who taught me and quite a number of other people around. And they had a historical link to the area. But when you don't have a historical link to the area, you do lose history, and you do lose that connection of those early people that made some real changes to the area. I also think you could also look at the landscape things or prominence
Sorry,
that
Mr.
have gone
I'm
back
going to have a
historically.
point of order.
Yeah,
The item is relating to three.
No, all right. I think
names.
it needs to be reviewed.
Hang on,
Councillor
sorry.
Farrelly.
Oh,
Thanks.
sorry.
The item's relating to three names that are recommended by officers in accordance with the Geographical Names Committee requirements. It's not us discussing how we name roads. It's simply just on those three names.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Farrelly, if you could
Thank you
keep
very
your debate
much,
to this item.
Councillor Sandry brings us back on task. Look, as in regard to that, I think there's an opportunity here, and as in Scarborough, I use that opportunity and thank Tony Christovicus, my co-councillor, for supporting those. I think it makes it a better decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to debate this item? No, I'll go back to Councillor Migdale to close debate.
Thank you, Chair. I actually do have something else to say on this. A couple of years ago, we had a laneway in Mount Lawley, which was renamed as a result of a resident coming to council and petitioning council with the fact that a relative of hers, who she could trace back many, many years, centuries ago, and we had the laneway was then renamed, and council was extremely supportive. It was a unanimous decision in that instance. I think we're all very much in favour of the idea of choosing names for our right-of-ways to mark individuals who have added to our local areas, because hey, let's face it, that's what we're about. So in this instance, though, three names had been chosen by officers who work with Landgate and the policy as it is, one of whom, Shirley Mary Nunn, did paint for many, many years in Watermans as a resident of Stirling, and most of her later artwork was North Beach. So she was a City of Stirling artist, and I felt very comfortable and felt that that name was more relatable, but at the same time I understood there would be issues with emergency services and understanding, hearing the name and the clarity. Though that is not to say that residents could not petition in any instance to have a right-of-way name changed in honour of a family member or historic overlap with an area. In fact, I certainly would encourage that, and I'm sure every other councillor would too. We have roots and we like to celebrate our roots. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. And with that, closed debate. So I will put that on and move Councillor Migdale, seconded Councillor Proud. I think we're missing a couple. Councillor Farrelly. Thank you. Thank you, and that motion is carried with Councillor Farrelly and Councillor Reeve voting against, other councillors all voting for. We'll now go to the balance of reports. Councillor Migdale, would you like to move the balance of reports, just those other two items?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the balance for reports.
Thank you, and seconded Deputy Mayor Proud, and I'll just go to the vote on that one. Councillor Lagan and Nolo. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Members of the gallery and those at home, the remainder of the Planning and Development Committee recommendations have been adopted by exception resolution. We shall now go on to Director Council items, starting with item 13.1. The first one of those, 13.1, Development Application Lot 572, House Number 200, West Coast Highway, Scarborough, Development WA, proposed 27-storey mixed-use development. Do I have a mover of a motion? Councillor Kristovich, if you'd like to stand up with your microphone, thanks.
Sorry, officer's recommendation, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kristovich has moved the officer recommendation, noting that Councillor Sandri has left the chamber. Councillor Farrelly is seconding. Is there anyone opposed to this recommendation? Thank you. I'll go to the vote on that. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. If we can let Councillor Sandri come back in. I'll just check because 13.2, she may want to stay out. So we're going to 13.2. This is the other JDAP. Those who wish to leave may now leave. So we're just noting Councillor Farrelly and Councillor Migdale are leaving the chamber.
Mr Mayor, I did take it on your advice whether or not the potential of...
That's very dangerous. It can't be my advice. I would suggest you take it on your own advisement. So you declared it impartial, understanding that you're not currently sitting on this JDAP application. If you think you will be, then it's up to you to decide to leave the chamber.
Well, I think the issue
I can't give you any more than that.
No, I think Mrs Shears can make the could make a comment about when the application has to be lodged, and I think Councillor Migdale may be away at that time, so that's my concern.
Ms Shears?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the City's officers' report needs to be, or the recommendation from Council needs to be submitted by the 17th of July, and the meeting just needs to be held on or before the 28th of July.
So Councillor Migdale may be on leave? If you're concerned, leave the chamber. I'm not having this come back and say, you told me not to. So off you go. I see exactly what you're doing there. Yeah. Okay, so noting that all of our JDAP deputies and presiding or sitting members are leaving the chamber, so it's 4 of them out. We'll now go to 13.2. Councillor Ferranti, you have indicated.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I do have an alternative recommendation I'd like to put up on the board. It is fairly wordy, and I'll be specific to a couple of sections in the opening paragraph, which is does not endorse and also refuse. I'd like to highlight the fact that I'm supporting the close to 300 verified signatures that don't think that this proposal works.
I think you're going into debate. How about reading out the alt-rec?
I'd like to further add the recommendations by the various clauses, and I'll start with A, and I'll only read the section that I think relates to it, which is the building is over the permitted height and is not compatible or consistent with the other building heights within the locality, i.e. the streetscape. B, the plot ratio is excessive and results in overdevelopment of the site, resulting in inadequate car parking for the development, as well as insufficient waste and surfacing arrangements. C, the traffic generated from the development will have a negative traffic flow and safety impact on Clem Lane and Canwick Lane. Also, D, waste collection for residential units and commercial tenancies of Walcott Street near Clem Lane will have negative safety impacts for drivers exiting Clem Lane and drivers along Walcott Street. E, Insufficient on-site visitor parking has been provided for the 33 multiple dwellings and 5 commercial tenancies, which result in a major parking problem in the local area. F, the development does not provide adequate on-site delivery and service collection as the restricted use of the 4 visitor embayment bays will contribute to further existing parking problems in the local area. And finally, G, the development is not designed in accordingly to the levels of the site, resulting in the basement level being raised and excessive fill abutting the adjoining residential properties. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrante. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Lagan. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? If I may, from the chair, if I could ask a question first of all, and then I will ask for comment as well from the director in a sec. And what I'd like the director to explain is just what this means if this is passed by council, just so that people in the gallery understand what council's motion does to the recommendation. My question is, quite often when we go through a deferral or those processes through you, director, we get to put conditions on them, for example, with the car bays or the way the bins are collected or those sort of things. By refusing the application, do we still have the ability to work with the applicant through the decision-making process to condition if it is approved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if the city recommends refusal for an application, the JDAP member, the presiding member, may ask before the meeting for an alternate recommendation for approval, and Mr. Mastilis talked to that this evening. I think it was 2 days in advance. At that stage, the officers will prepare conditions for approval, which would be applied to the development, and that would be up to the JDAP then to decide. So conditions would be provided should the JDAP ask.
Thank you. And now can you just explain, so if this is passed by council, just so the members of the gallery understand the JDAP process a little bit, because I know it can be confusing.
So through the chair, if this alternate is supported, this becomes the recommendation from the City of Stirling. The reason is provided to the JDAP, and that's the starting point. It doesn't change the officer's report, and that's why Ms. Shears said previously before, when asked about the officer's recommendation, she had to talk to the report which has been signed off by myself as the Director of Planning. The alternate recommendation is there, it's up front, and the reasons for that are provided, and Councillor Ferrante has provided that through this motion. That's the starting point. But then it's up to the JDAP as a decision maker where they go with that.
Thank you for that explanation. There is no one opposed to this, so I will put that motion. Move Councillor Ferrante, seconded Councillor Lagan. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. If we can... There's a little way to go. Can we please let the councillors know to come back in? I'll just pause for a minute to allow them to come back in. Thanks, councillors. Good to have you all back. Councillors, we're all here, so we'll get back on with it and go to item 13.3, the City of Stirling Corporate Business Plan. Absolute majority vote is required on this, and I'll ask for a mover of a motion. Move Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation in the document. I do have a couple of questions.
Thank you, and Councillor Hatton has seconded that. Is there anyone opposed? Happy to go.
I also just have some questions.
Yeah, happy to take some questions.
Yep.
Yep, so Councillor Ree has indicated against for now, so we can have debate if you'd
She's
like
indicated
to.
she's borderline.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Questions with comments, how's that? We'll go in between.
Councillor Lagan should actually withdraw that along with
Happy to
Councillor
withdraw.
Perkoff's comment.
Happy to withdraw.
Oh, you did say it.
It's great being
Keep going.
withdrawn. Yes.
Withdrawn.
Thank you to officers for the report. Obviously, it's important that the city has a strong corporate business plan, that it's well aligned to our budget, and we see that in this document. I need to add one quick or two quick questions through you. On page 15 of the report, it talks about implementing the homeless strategy and gives a dollar figure. Can officers tell how much of the partially grant funded, what percentage is it? Is it about 50%?
My understanding is it's exactly 50% from memory.
Yep.
Yes.
And I had one other question, one other comment that I note the upgrade of the Macaulay Park, and I'm glad that that was in there. I have one other question about the aged care expenditure. Can officers through you just explain how we're moving through that aged care process in those years 23 to 27?
Yes, Mr Quirk.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that is a broad question, but importantly, I think the starting point for next year's budget and corporate business plan is the fact that the city has now exited in-home care and support services, and we exited that as of the 30th of June. So that's an important movement in terms of our direct service delivery. So now what that subservice focuses on is the continued delivery of our day clubs, the continued delivery of our Meals on Wheels. Having said that, we have close scrutiny of the business case that sits behind that over the coming 1 to 3 years, and the continued provision of our community transport services. So the important change over the next few years is that exit from in-home support and the continuous review of Meals on Wheels as to whether the city should remain the direct deliverer of that service.
How does that go, Councillor Lagan? Happy with that? Good. Who was the second? I apologise. Councillor Hatton. Did you have anything?
No further, no. Thank you.
We'll go to Councillor Reeve first. You indicated you're borderline.
We talk about the corporate business plan, and when it actually came in to start with, it was about joining up all the silos of the business units. That's the whole idea, bringing it all together so that with a bigger picture, everybody's on the same team. What I get confused about is that it doesn't appear to be across the city. We have got pockets that continually attracting infrastructure funding, pockets that seem to go further and other pockets don't. And I just think that if we're going to do a corporate plan, especially when they're the big city that we are, it should be across the city with a lot of things. I've raised before about the maintenance of our buildings and that we should be upgrading all our buildings, especially for sustainability, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, whether it's rain, whatever we're going to do. We should be upgrading the buildings. And I disagreed at the time with Mr Littleton, our previous director, who said that there was no need to do bowling clubs and that it was better to just do the other buildings, you know?
I don't recall that at all, Councillor Reeve. I'd say
I think I could find that if you like.
that would be good.
It was said several times. That, you know, when he was looking at sustainability, he didn't see the need to do the solar or anything. We talked about it not long ago, about putting a battery hub on places that we've got a lot of sporting grounds where we've got bowling clubs and footy ovals that we can use the community's extra energy to help run them at night. We have to be more innovative. We have to go a bit further than what we're going. This is corporate. This is money. We're not looking at it across the city. And I don't think we're looking at it for those sort of projects. and that concerns
Point of order,
me.
Mr Mayor. That item on solar and power provision was discussed at the last committee meeting. It's not being ignored, and it has been taken into the purview of the budget.
Thank you. And Councillor Reid, it's really hard for me to sit up here and listen when this council has been involved completely in the strategic community plan and following that, the corporate business plan, and understanding the different areas of the city and how they work together, and particularly even the solar escalation, the stuff you're talking about, and the long-term financial planning for our infrastructure. There's never been greater spending on all of our buildings throughout the city. So I struggle to listen to you say that it's not happening. 5 workshops on this with council.
Thank you for the intervention from Councillor Lagan.
Councillor,
And yes,
very
I did
careful.
say
I suggest you be very careful.
that's very good comment. Very interesting comment. I shall note that. I actually made that comment just then. We have done things on sustainability. We're looking at solar. We're not looking far enough at what we're doing at a maintenance program.
Councillor, this isn't another chance to have a go to change council decision making. Council has made decisions on solar escalation. The corporate business plan isn't a chance to go back through each item on council and change what council has decided.
I didn't say it was. What I was saying was it was the overarching, and I'm quite happy to go and find the motions that I've put up, looking at that maintenance program and going forward, which didn't get the support for whatever reason. But to me, when I'm looking at a corporate business plan, they're the things that I think should align. And yes, I could be definitely wrong about looking at sustainability in that view. But to me, it does. And I just think that when we're looking at this, we should be more innovative and it should be more guts to it across the whole of the city, if I'm allowed to say that.
You may say that.
Thank
you, Councillor Reid. Is there any other comments relating? Councillor Dudek?
Thank you. Just a question. On page 246 on the corporate business plan, as a quote that says, facilitate cat containment by providing discounted microchipping and sterilisation. So I'm just wondering about this because the issue of cat containment wasn't brought up in any of the budget packs or the revised ones that I received, and council has specifically voted against any cat containment measures when they came up from the EGM. So I'm just wondering whether it was a typo or does the city plan to facilitate cat containment in any way?
Thank you. It was a decision of council, so if you recall, there was already some money on the budget. Some of it was for other things. It was to do with I forget the name, the things on the side of homes that you put for your cat to run in. During the debates at council asked for the money to be reprioritised and just ensure that there was more cat trapping, because that was talked about as being underutilised, especially around our environmental areas.
Understood. I'm happy with cat trapping. Cat containment is a different issue, I believe, though, which talks about keeping cats contained in someone's property.
And that's why this was reallocated, so it was particularly around the cat trapping on environmental areas.
On page 246, it says cat containment. Yeah. If I can just clarify.
Happy to look at that and get clarification or change it. We're happy to amend that. That's not the intent. Councillors, are there any other indications on this? If not, I will go to Councillor Lagan to close debate.
Nothing further to add, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. That closes debate, so I will put the corporate business plan 13.3 to the vote. Thank you, and that is carried with Councillor Reid voting against the corporate business plan. And we'll go to item 13.4, the adoption of the 23-24 municipal budget and relevant documents. Councillor Sandri.
Thank you. Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Kristovich. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Reid. Councillor Sandri, your debate.
Yeah, thank you. We went through many iterations of the budget, and I'd like to thank the officers for their time in putting it together. And I thought this year that I would move the motion, considering where I stood last year on it, and I think that the documents presented thereafter with the track changes for us to fully understand how the amendments were made through to the budget that's in front of us tonight is very much appreciated. I think our rate rise is very fair in the current economic climate, and I think that the projects that we set to deliver will be outstanding for our community, and therefore I support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kristovich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, I too obviously would like to support this budget. You know, we've gone through a very long and arduous process to look at this line by line, item by item, to make sure that the money is being spent in all of the right areas that will benefit all of the ratepayers of the City of Stirling. You know, there are numerous demands that come to councillors on a daily basis from the community about things they'd like us to do for them. And, you know, the City of Stirling is actually very good at delivering on so many projects to a very high standard. And obviously those demands haven't stopped. There's still a lot out there across all the wards that needs to be done. But of course we need to balance that with the current financial situation. And, you know, I think both in terms of the rate rises and the fees and charges, but also with our strategic investments going forward, I think we're on the right track to try and make sure that we keep these in check and that we keep debt free. And I think we've done great on all of those areas. I think a lot of hard work has gone in by officers and by the councillors. And I think it's a very good budget, and I think in terms of where we sit, in terms of the more broader sense of local governments, I think we're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ree.
Thank you. It is my concern about us setting a budget. I'll just preface that though. I do actually agree with Councillor Sandri. I actually think it's a better format, and the things that have gone on this year are a bit better than last year. So, and they're getting better all the time, whether it's to do with the internet or the ability of our technology to trap some of these things. I actually think it's improved. My concern is us setting a budget when we haven't looked at the licence and leases. We've actually said, and I'll just come back to a comment by Ms Hawkins, that the licence and leasee workshop, of which just gave what their comments were, wasn't overall what was happening that day and the summary. So that's still not there. But one of the questions in there was the cost across the board. And I don't think we can set the licence and leasees in this when we haven't actually discussed the variables that each one of the different clubs that came discussed. And we've got one club paid $15,000 a year and the other club paid $1,500. The disparity, yes, the services might be different and everything else like that, but somehow, which is why I tried to get this workshop going to start with, that isn't there. That could affect the budget. And so that's one thing.
I can tell you, I'm quite comfortable that it won't affect the budget. The budget can quite easily be improved. Remembering that each year this council gets the opportunity to not only attend those 5 or 6 workshops to discuss all of these items through the budget process, a very intense, significant, robust process. Once the budget is approved, at any time, new motions come up from council all the time relating to community needs, things that maybe have become prevalent now that weren't before, changes in service levels, changes in infrastructure, over cost runs. All of those can be dealt with through budget review cycles during the year. So there is no point in, there's no problem at all with approving this budget. Dealing with something like discussing maybe more similarities between leases and licensees and what they pay, and then reviewing that at a mid-year budget review. That's not a problem.
I've been raising this leasing and licensing thing for about 4 or 5 years.
This isn't about the lease and licensing.
No, it is about the
that
cost
item
to
is
the
coming
clubs.
back to council as a separate item, and if there are implications on a budget, that can still be dealt with.
But it's not being dealt with, that's my point. And it's still in here, and the costs are in here, and it hasn't been resolved when the community look at it. So to me, that is still outstanding. It's like, you know, the services we provide, like the scoreboards, the water fountains, the air conditioning, they're our buildings. The whole idea...
Councillor, you're debating a different item.
It is the same, it's a cost factor. If we're going to upgrade and we're going to put things on the budget, then they're the things that should be there, not keep coming in. I mean, Doubleview Bowling Club is 62 years old and it's getting older by the minute.
Thank you, Councillor. And you've got an item on the agenda tonight to discuss that.
And I've sat there and said, we've got to start looking after our older buildings and everything. And I don't know where it goes. So what I'm saying is, if we had a plan to doing it, then this budget would be very different. And that's my concern, that some of these issues, it's all right to say budget review, and some of these issues like Classic, the bowling club, Doubleview, they were on the budget to do something, and then when it was supposed to be amalgamations, they got taken off, they weren't allowed to have anything because in case they went to the new council. Then they were back on the budget, and then the ceiling fell in with the storm, and so they ended up with asbestos. Then they got a Band-Aid thing there, then it didn't get fixed up again. So, you know, and there's Butler's Reserve that was on fire. We got fire money from it. It got flooded I don't know how many times. And yet these are the things
Councillor,
that
you are
getting better.
completely off track now.
It isn't off track.
It is completely off track. If you'd like to discuss the budget before you, I'm happy to listen.
Well, that's the budget before me that I don't feel is actually addressing some of the property we have that have had issues for years and years that doesn't seem to get a Guernsey for whatever reason. So to me, this is not going all over the city. It's not addressing some of the issues we've got on some of our older buildings. It's not sitting there making a stand on exactly what is a fixture and what isn't a fixture so we can improve everything going forward. Rest my case.
Thank you, Councillor Ree. Is there any other debate on this item? If not, I'll go to Councillor Sandri to close. Thank you, and I'll now put that to the vote. Thank you, councillors. I think we've got one more. Councillor Farrelly. Yes, you have now. Thank you. So that motion is carried with all councillors voting for, except Councillor Ree, who has voted against the budget. Only half the money to Doubleview this year. Okay. Councillors, I would like to just briefly make a comment. Sometimes it's lost in the fact we just have a small amount of debate on those two particular items, being the corporate business plan and the adoption of the budget and relevant documents. But I do want to, first of all, acknowledge CEO Stuart Jardine, the executive team, in particular Ingrid Hawkins and your team, who do an incredible amount of work on this finance, but not to be lost the rest of the directors and your departments who do the work, but also to Michelle Woolsencroft and your team, and all those other staff. It is a massive, monumental amount of work that the staff put in. Councillors are very aware of that because, as I've mentioned a few times tonight, it's a very significant and a very robust process. The integrated and reporting framework that we use means that we are engaged from the early start to review the community strategic plan and understand what our community want, and then to meet on many occasions, many Saturday workshops. I think a total of 6 workshops in total, on top of those independent meetings that ward councillors all had with infrastructure teams to discuss ward priorities and all those buildings that need upgrades and the things that we'd like to prioritise. So it's a significant amount of work. We've now adopted those, the budget and the corporate business plan, and as you've acknowledged tonight, we've managed to only apply a 3.24% increase. I think it's really important to note that the City talked long and hard regarding the cost inflation that is out in the community at the moment, and acknowledge that whilst we're trying to deal with cost overruns on all of our projects, the significant increases that we deal with in our utilities as well, and also it being a Landgate revaluation year, which would have significantly impacted the budgets, we've managed to lower the rate in the dollar to compensate and only apply a small increase. Understanding it still puts pressure on our households, but it's important that we deliver a budget that's debt-free and balanced, and look after our community. Some of the highlights this year are we are still able to finish off the Terry Tyzack Aquatic Centre redevelopment, the Hammersley Public Golf Course Pavilion driving range, and the renewal of the Recycling Centre Balcatta. Very significant projects totalling many millions of dollars. Additional solar voltaic cells, including the city's operations centre and the community hub. Over $1 million for the city's new community grants program, which is a significant part in making our community live in a very livable environment. Almost $4 million for the renewal of existing park assets, including playgrounds, barbecues, seating, drink fountains, fencing, concrete paths and park signs. Almost $1 million to improve the standard of turf surfaces for the city's high-use sports field and playing surfaces. $750,000 to implement coastal management works. $600,000 in Mirrabooka to fund a number of infrastructure projects to support further land releases, and many other details that are in there that will come out, I guess, as you read it tomorrow and get through it, those members of the public who are interested in this. On top of this, I'd also just like to finish by saying it's been a fantastic year to finish with this corporate business plan, acknowledging that recently the city, and we announced it a couple of weeks ago, recently the city was awarded the 9th consecutive gold for its reporting through the planning and reporting stages, and also a 96% customer satisfaction. So again, to the staff involved in supporting this council to serve our community, thank you very much. And now to lighten it up, I'll go into the playground policy review. Item 13.5, Councillor Sundry, I believe this started as a motion, I think.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation, and you can say a few words if you like.
Sure. Councillor Migdale has seconded you. Yeah, is there? I'll just check if there's anyone opposed first. If not. Yep.
Very quick, I just want to say thank you to the city's officers in Mick's team and Simone and everyone who worked on it, because they turned this around very quickly, and it was in response to some issues that we were having regarding the playground policy, and I hope from this we can build upon it and make it even better into the future. But I think for now it strikes the right balance, and I think our ratepayers will be very much appreciative of that, and very much appreciative that we'll go out for consultation for new playgrounds, which is great. Thank you.
Happy kids everywhere, Councillor Sundry. Councillor Ree, you got a question?
So I actually think...
It was just questions unless...
So considering what happened a couple of years ago with an issue off a playground and having to redo the playgrounds, that this is actually really good. The only question I would ask is, I was told that you don't get a shade sale if you have so many trees. Who makes that? I didn't really find it in here.
What the criteria is for shade sales or trees?
Yeah.
Mr Quirk.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, so we've added that flexibility over the last couple of years, recognising that whilst natural shade is still the preferred shade outcome, it does take some time for those trees to provide appropriate canopy cover. So it really is just a pragmatic decision where there's requirement for shade over a playground. We will now consider artificial shade, although our preference in the long term remains natural tree canopy.
Thank you. Yes. So is the Recreation Department, Community and Recreation make that decision, or do Parks Department? Can I just have that clear, please?
Both.
Yes.
Both in consultation with councillor and the community.
Yeah,
That's
correct.
the answer you want to hear. It is right. So the reason for this...
the answer I'd like to hear, but I'd like to know what happens in reality, please.
That's it. And it's now on live stream recording. That's it.
I shall snippet that bit.
Councillor Lagan, you have a question?
No, I
just... Councillors, this isn't open for debate. There's no one opposed. So...
What's your question? You got a question?
I'll frame it as a question then. So through you, Mr Mayor, can officers tell me, will the officers continue with the excellent process of community consultation that occurred with Macaulay Park?
Mr Quirk.
One of the fundamental changes, through you, Mr Mayor, one of the fundamental changes to this policy is embedding community engagement. So I can certainly say the answer is yes.
Councillor Migdale.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate congratulations to officers, to Mick and his team. Thank you very, very much for the way that you've managed amending this policy, and I think that it's far better and residents are far better served for the changes that you've made.
Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you.
Look, it's really in regard to the opportunity when out of the community, initiated really from community rather than a consultation process. And is that still going to be another way for particularly local playgrounds to get revisited or...
Yes, the simple answer is yes. The whole reason for this policy review is to ensure that community are listened to and that all sizes of parks and playgrounds have the ability to have reasonable amount of equipment and amenity.
The reason I ask is there is a young 9-year-old who did lead the charge at Wembley Downs, and that was a great initiative, and I think we should, honour those people who are really interested at that age and help them. Thanks.
That's exactly who it's for, councillor. All right. We haven't had debate. Move Councillor Sandry, seconded Councillor Migdale. We'll go to the vote. Thank you. That is unanimous. Happy kids everywhere. 13.6, Neighbourhood Safety Initiative Trial in Nollamara and Westminster. Councillor Criado.
Sorry. Happy to go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Dudek has seconded that. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Lagan, your question?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. I do support this, but I do have a question that talks about a safety initiative trial action plan. For my clarity, does that action plan and the steps that are being considered here, does that superimpose across all of the wards in the city, and is it part of the new community safety plan that the council reviewed recently?
Thank you. Mr Mullins? No, it's just... Mr Quirk will say... That made you
Do
jump. I
something.
saw you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. This particular action plan in response to the notice of motion only applies to the suburbs of Nollamara and Westminster. We certainly look forward to assessing it at the end of this pilot period to see whether it can indeed be extended across other parts of the city. But certainly just our capability to do this is as a direct result of the restructure that's recently occurred to community safety and the more localised focus and the focus on getting more security officers and rangers on the street.
Does that help? Thank you. There's no one opposed, so I will put that. Move Councillor Criado, seconded Councillor Dudek. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Now go to item 13.7, eligible governing body and elected member superannuation. This item does need a unanimous vote of council for it to be resolved. Councillor Lagan is...
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the officer's recommendation just with a few comments.
Thank you, Councillor Ree. You're happy to second that?
Yep. Question.
Councillor Lagan?
Sorry, I'm
is there anyone opposed? Or like... I'll allow questions.
I'm just checking we don't have a suggested alternative.
No, it's right.
No? Okay, look, thank you, and thank you to the officers for putting this up. Again, it always niggles me to go and have a look at relevant documents, and I downloaded the gazetted item from April 2023, and within that, the changes to the Local Government Act and the determination of salaries and allowance tribunal. And I note that there's a section on superannuation. This has been discussed for a number of years at the city, and we are aligning ourselves, as it says in the document, with the two superannuation guarantee and act requirements for the law. And I think it's important just to note that there, in some discussion, even though elected members are not full employees or have not previously been, it would be true to say that many of the elected members at many councils, many municipalities, work very long hours for their community, very long hours in meetings such as budget and workshops, and for the work that councillors and elected members do to not be recognised with the same sort of remuneration and safety net that everyone in the Australian workforce has would be disappointing, to say the least. This came up at a Walga State Council meeting, and one thing that was brought up was one lady got up and said for many young mothers, they would never stand for council if they were not also getting the same remuneration support that all workers get in our Australian work environment. And I thought that was an interesting point. But this is a big change for our council. There's some cost involved in it, but I think it's an important change because it recognises the work that elected members do, and it gives us as a council, but also the government, the opportunity to support that work and bring us into line with all other workers in state and federal agreements.
Councillor Reid, would you like to add comment?
Well, as you know, although it's not recorded in here, that I have made this comment several times, and of which I could go into why you actually did not like my motion a while ago, but we won't go there. Everyone can read that one. But I actually think it's a good idea because in the eastern states, this is already a given. What does concern me, as I said last time, is that the Salaries Tribunal have said that we're volunteers. Volunteers at about 0.5 cent an hour. So, you know, I think this is a long way forward. But when you look at councils that are on the same level as us throughout Australia, and that's in number of population we have, the councils get $60,000-70,000 dollars a year, and they get taxed and they get superannuation. I find it weird that when you do JDAP, when you do other things for state government departments, you get taxed and you get superannuation. So it's a very anomaly that, you know, local government has somehow missed out on this or not being treated fairly like everybody else. So I think it is important to bring it into perspective of not only other government departments, because we are still government, but it puts it in line with the rest of Australia, and I think that that's a good thing.
Thank you, Councillor. I will just make a quick comment, and it's only because we are on live stream, and you did indicate that I didn't support this. The reason this item is on the agenda is I requested it to come to support yourself and Councillor Lagan. Just to be clear. Councillor
Just to be
Dudek,
clear, my
you finished. Councillor
superannuation
Dudek.
notice of motion, which was
Councillor
put up
Dudek,
last year.
sit down,
Thank you.
please. Councillor Dudek.
People can read it.
If I can please just clarify, it says that becoming an eligible governing body makes us employees for superannuation and payroll purposes. Is there any other purposes that we're classed as employees? Is it across the board or just for payments?
See you at 9 in the morning, Councillor. Mr Blanchard.
Those are the primary effects in relation to the Commonwealth taxation regime and the Commonwealth superannuation regime. It would not have any impact on the status of an elected member as an employee under state legislation, such as the Work Health Safety Act and the Industrial Relations Act.
Happy with that? Councillors, are there any other questions on this? Happy to take questions. Councillor Perkoff.
Question. Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to support this. I've got a question through you to the officers. Are we the first council that's embarked on this? Or maybe we're not. I'd just like to hear if there's anything from... well, okay, in WA. Thanks, Councillor Ree. I just want to see, there's always going to be a perception out there from the ratepayers community at large, thinking, oh, why, you know, it's already like troughs in the, snouts in the trough and all this sort of stuff, and here's some more and so on. You'll see it on social media pages at other councils and so on. Just want to get a comment, whichever way. Is this out there? Have any other councils tried it? What's our sort of general thought on, you know, what we're embarking? But happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I can answer that. No other council in Western Australia currently pays superannuation. We're in a different system than the rest of the country, and a different political system as well. This has been something that many councillors around this table have supported many times. In fact, we're the first ones to put it as a council to WALGA to be an advocacy position at a state level and at a federal level. The Minister acknowledged this, and through the lobbying of this council and through WALGA, acknowledged that it was an issue and said that it would be part of the reforms. To date, it has not been a priority in those reforms. So given the comments around the last meeting, I talked to Mr Blanchard and asked the Manager of Governance to investigate the possibility for us to lead the sector and show a way that this was able to be done to provide that remuneration through superannuation.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions? Councillor Ferrante.
So, Mr Mayor, in addition to all the superannuation payments, would it be also a consideration after a long term of service that comes into the discussion as well? Because there's a lot of hours and a lot of time and a lot of years that people put in. Would that be also presented as part of the discussion?
I'm not sure what your question is. Is it regarding long service leave entitlements?
Correct.
I wouldn't think so, because this is Commonwealth legislation, so it's a different... Yeah. Am I Mr Blanchard?
That's correct. The only other thing to note is that local government reform is bringing in parental leave allowances for councillors. Long service leave will not be changed as a result of this.
Might be grandparent leave soon, councillor. Councillors, are there any other questions? If not, thank you for those questions and the debate, and I will now put that item again, noting that it does need unanimous support to be able to be applied. That was nerve-wracking for a second there, wasn't it? Thank you. Thank you, councillors, and that is unanimous. Congratulations. I think it's a wonderful achievement for the city. I think it bodes well for the future in attracting the right sort of people on council. That does bring us to item 14, notice of motion for consideration. Councillor Ree, your first one. 393.
Yeah, because of the confusion of some of the Innaloo people, I'm quite happy to support the city's recommendation 395. Sorry, my apologies. On page 395, the city follows the process set out the community garden. They did talk to different people at the city, but they were actually given a very confusing. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Anyway,
This way that they definitely know in print what they have to do. So
Yep.
they just got a bit confused.
No problem at all. And Deputy Mayor Proud is happy to second that. That's for the community garden, so it's just to work with the members of the community. So I will, if there's no one opposed, I'll put that to the vote. We've just got a couple to go. One more. Councillor Ree? That's right, and that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll go to item 14.2 now. Proposed notice of motion, Councillor Migdale.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I would like to move the suggested alternative recommendation, please, just for clarity, that the Mayor writes to the Minister for Energy and the Minister for Local Government to request that Western Power reinstates their bulk globe replacement program and undertakes an accelerated program to replace all of the mercury vapour globes within 2 years.
Councillor Sundry has seconded that. Is there anyone opposed? Then I'll put that to the vote. Couple more to go, councillors. Let's hold it together. Let's get these votes done. Councillor Olo, a vote, please. Councillor Hatton, a vote, please. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. One of those ministers does enjoy watching our live stream, so if you're watching, Minister, if you can send me a message so I can save myself a letter, that'd be great. We'll go to item 14.3 now, proposed notice of motion from myself. Councillor Ree is happy to move that. Councillor Kristovich is happy to second it. Is anyone opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ree. Councillor Ree, just vote now. And I've got Councillor Farrelly a vote too, please. I've got Ree and Farrelly. That's it. That's unanimous now. 14.4, proposed notice of motion, Councillor Ree, roundabout at Rosewood, 403.
Yes, please. Could I have, after consultation with regard to some of the issues, I have down the bottom.
Yep.
Can
we have that one up a bit?
Yeah, otherwise people can't see.
Okay, all that.
And this is because, when the ratepayers and the community were consulted nearly 20 years ago, well, probably over that with Town Planning Scheme 38, to address the increase in the fact that the Stevenson plan hadn't come to fruition, that the Pearson Street would have been then downgraded into possibly one lane. And there was land set aside to make sure when they developed the Greenwich Gardens, but it's actually a one lane, not two. And people can see from the plan that if it stayed at 2 lanes, it would have been tricky to get in. So to address the increase in traffic due to the increase in schools, Newman College, the International School, Woodlands has got bigger, Churchland's got bigger, all the schools have got a lot bigger around there. And to get out of, it took me 40 minutes the other day to go like half a kilometre. The traffic was just
so
ridiculous.
you're getting into debate when it's...
So, well, I'm seeing my reasons for decision.
Yep.
I realise that a lot of it is out of our control, so hopefully the councillors support that we have to go back to state government.
Can I ask for, if you do consider, so the issue is I'm very aware that the member has plans for different parts of Stevenson Avenue extension, and it's very different, as you're aware. And it's involved in the MRS scheme, but this also leaves out the section between Empire and Pearson Street through that section. Can I suggest, rather than requesting they progress the one, that we request a meeting with the ward councillors and the mayor to discuss, and then that could be a follow-on? It's just, it's very final, so it's sort of, it's asking for something that hasn't been discussed with her yet. Are you happy with that?
It actually has been. We've talked to when Ms Tonkin had an open day.
So it's only, I do know, because I've been involved with the member, and I know that Mr Guillemot has had discussions, and I don't believe that portion is even touted to be an extension at the moment.
Well, that's the whole point. That is the extension that we really need to do, and I'm quite happy for Mr. Guillemot.
But that's, so if you can listen, I'm trying to help, because I struggle just to request a meeting when we don't know the implications of it. Request that it happens. I think it would be good if, I'm happy to follow up, but I think if we request a meeting with her to discuss it with yourself and Councillor Proud, and I'm happy to be there, and if the outcome of that is that it's a possibility, then I'm happy to write the letter. Are you happy for that?
And with Mr. Roddick.
Yep.
Or,
yep.
and Daniel
and
Haymans
Mr Guillemot. We can take the whole team.
And Mr Haymans.
But I just think it's a more sensible progress so that we can have the discussion.
And
They'll be, and relevant
officers.
You happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yep.
I think the intent is there, but it's just that it's got out of control of late, especially in winter.
No,
and plus
understand.
all the tradesmen.
Understand. Yep. Councillor Proud's happy to second that. Thank you, councillors. Just the vote. We got the, yep. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 14.5, Councillor Ree, you've been busy. Your motion. (408) Art.
Well, because I've been quiet for too long, I feel. So 408 is with regard to the murals on the wall. I think I had a
No,
good...
councillor, we just need your motions. We don't need the debate.
Motion
Yep.
presented to a future community resort regarding a suitable art mural design in conjunction with the ward councillors, all sporting clubs aligned to Bennett Park, double view on the walls of the club store and to depict a rich sports culture, because at the moment all they are is a graffiti haven and they are horrible.
Councillor Proud, you're happy to support that?
Just white,
Yep.
awful.
No. Good idea. No problem at all. Councillor Proud supported it. Anyone opposed? I'll put that to the vote. That is unanimous. Thank you. 14.6, Councillor Reid, Doubleview Bowling Club.
With regard to this, it's presented to be considered as part of the budget process for the Better Suburbs program, of which we don't have any Better Suburbs program south of Scarborough Road, but it should be considered because in line with the 2025 National Bowling, they haven't been upgraded
Councillor,
for a long time.
I need your motion. You're debating a motion that we don't know.
That is my motion, to be considered the host for the 2025 National Bowling Championships. That's the motion.
The one that's up in front of me?
Yeah. The facilities upgraded to enable the club to be considered as part of the project progress, a Better Suburbs program.
Okay, it's hard for me to follow because you're starting halfway through and then going back. So just.
Well, I said Better Suburbs.
As long as that is a motion.
That is the motion, and the reason is that it's one of the top bowling clubs in the city of Stirling, and as I alluded to before,
the intent is clear.
Very little being done to it.
The intent is clear. It's considered in the budget process, an upgrade. Councillor Proud is happy to second that. Question?
Should this motion read in accordance with the Better Suburbs program when that is not applicable to the Doubleview Bowling Club?
Can I have clarification on the Better Suburbs program? I thought that was a planning program that...
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, that there's no relevance or link between this NOM and the Better Suburbs program, but officers certainly understood the intent in that it's seeking consideration of facility upgrades through the budget process.
So I think if we leave out budget program, if you're happy with that, Councillor Reid, it becomes irrelevant in this. What did I say? Leave. Yeah, don't leave the budget process out. The Better Suburbs program, sorry. That's what I was looking at. Head went somewhere else. You happy with that? Same thing? Yep. You happy with that? Good. Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Thank you, Councillor Sundry. Thank you, Councillor Kristovich. Just a vote. Thank you. Councillor Dudek, your proposed notice of motion, 413.
Yes, happy to move the officer's suggested alternative recommendation on page 414.
Thank you. And that's seconded Councillor Criado. And is there anyone opposed? Yes?
Could we, and I have raised this with Mr Murphy, and my apologies to Mr Murphy that I haven't followed it up, but with regard to the public access ways, under the current system, if the walls, the fences or whatever makes up the public access way, if anything happens, the city's not responsible and the people have to pay for themselves. So is the lighting going to be something, if someone smashes the lights, do the people have to pay?
The lighting is in a dividing fence.
Yeah, I know,
I
but
can do
that's
that
under
one.
the State Dividing Act.
Yeah.
They said it wasn't. So I'm just making sure the people that
I know,
aligned
there's-
to it don't have to pay.
It will be included, but no, the cost of in-store lighting will be on public land. It is not part of the Dividing Fences Act. Councillor Sundry?
I understand that there's crime issues occurring in the Balga ward. I totally get it. But is there a reason why this is specific just to Balga ward when...
It's not.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, it was certainly raised by those councillors, but it was to include...
So
It's just
should
a
it
costing.
not just delete Balga ward and beyond? It should just say public access ways, comma, with costs broken down.
They're all, I'm happy, well, it's up to councillor, but the Councillor Dudek, Councillor Dudek, who represents the Balga ward, has noticed a significant issue. The thing is, public access ways probably aren't in every suburb anyway, but this is only for a report to come back on the cost, and the cost would be applicable right throughout the city across those. So, and it does say and beyond, so I'm comfortable the intent's there. Yep. In the Balga ward and other parts of the city.
I'm happy to accept that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the intent. And across the city. It's fine, it's just for a report to come back. The intent is clear. Thank you, Councillor Carrata, you're happy with that? Councillor Pratt, you got a question?
Just a question, is it pedestrian access way or public? It's my understanding it's pedestrian.
Yep.
So-
Again, that's the intent. Yep.
Through you
Again,
to
the
the
report will come back. Yep. We don't have to wordsmith this, guys. The report will come back. Officers are very clear what it is. They've been talking to Councillor Dudek. Thanks, councillors. I'll put that to the vote. That is unanimous. Thank you. Councillors, do you have any proposed notice of motion you'd like to raise for the next meeting? Councillor Lagan?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. My proposed notice of motion is that a report be, and I thank Mr Giamoff for assistance with the wording, that a report be presented to Council to advise on the estimated cost and feasibility of constructing a footpath along Polar Street between Surrey Street and Chapel Street, Dianella.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Farrelly, you have a notice of motion?
Yes, I do, Mr Mayor. That a report be presented to Council regarding opportunities to improve the enforcement, management and provision of parking at Scarborough Beach over the summer of 23-24. The background to this is that I'm looking for improvements to the accessibility and the management and enforcement of parking at Scarborough to ensure all who visit, including ratepayers, have the opportunity to be able to park in the designated beach car parks, and the provision, for more resident car parking in developments approved,
The intent's clear.
Yeah,
Yep.
basically...
You don't need to debate it. It's for a
there's-
notice of motion for the
It's
next...
not beach parking, it's for
Yep.
residential parking that's happening at the moment.
Yep.
Thank you.
And you'll be able to liaise with officers to ensure they get the intent if the
Yeah,
report
I
you want to come
will,
back.
yes, yeah.
Councillors, are there any other indications for notice of motions? No, thank you. Then I'll go to item 16, questions by members of which due notice has been given. I have nil. Item 17, new business of an urgent nature. We do have an item. And so with that, I will request that councillors ask that we go behind closed doors. Deputy Mayor Proud has indicated. So moving that we go behind closed doors. Second to Councillor Olo. Just a show of hands, councillors. Procedural just to Councillor Hatton and Ree. Councillor Hatton. Councillor Ree. Councillor Hatton. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you. If we can go behind closed